Hello, class. We have now arrived at the fifth Adil, and we see the title, Sexual Adjustments in Marriage Reflections, the dance of the Mahanaim. So let's look at this reflection. We see verse 10 of chapter 6. Who is this that grows like the dawn, as beautiful as the full moon, as pure as the sun, as awesome as an army with banners? Whereas the previous ideal dealt with sexual adjustments arising out of a specific marriage problem, the fifth ideal deals with sexual adjustment related to the trying of new techniques in the enjoyment of sex. In this reflection, Shulamite has gone down to the royal nut gardens to reflect on the vegetation now beginning to blossom. As she is returning to the palace, she encounters the daughters of Jerusalem, and they asked her, "Who is this?" So Shulamite's appearance is likened to the morning dawn. She is further compared to the full moon and to the sun. The Hebrew word translated moon emphasizes the whiteness of the moon rather than it being yellow. The Hebrew word translated sun emphasizes the warmness of the sun. As with Solomon, the daughters of Jerusalem liken Shulamite's beauty to an army with banners, about to go into battle confident of victory. Thus she appears as the morning dawn that breaks through the darkness of the night, beautiful like the silvery white moon, pure as the warm sun. Everything emphasizes the freshness of the woman. Let's look at verses 11 and 12. I went down to the orchard of nut trees to see the blossoms of the valley, to see whether the vine had budded or the pomegranates had bloomed. Before I was aware, my soul set me over the chariots of my noble people. In verse 11, Shulamite responds that on this spring morning, she had gone down to look at what reminded her most of home. She went down for the purpose of observing the state of the vegetation in the garden of walnuts. So she's in Jerusalem now and married to Solomon and in his home and her home, but she's thinking about where she was raised back in the mountains. The point of verse 12 is that because she had been so quickly and suddenly elevated from a country peasant girl to being the wife of the king, she is still not fully acculturated to the city life or to the royal life of the palace. Come back, O Shulamite, come back, that we may gaze at you." As Shulamite turns to continue on her way back to the palace, the daughters of Jerusalem call for her that they might find delight in looking upon her. The Hebrew word translated gaze means to delight one's eyes in looking at a thing. For the first time in the book, Shulamite is addressed by name. She's called O Shulamite. This name is not so much a proper name as it is a name of descent, pointing to Shulamite's place of origin. From the name, it is clear that Shulamite is from the town of Shunem, later known as Shulam. It was a town of the tribe of Issachar, and we know that from Joshua 9, verses 17 and 18, located at the foot of the hill of Morah. Shunem was noted for its beautiful women, for not only did Shulamite come from there, but also the beautiful Abishag, 1 Kings 1, verses 3 through 4. The Shunammite woman, Elisha's hostess, also lived there. Thus, Shulamite's home was in Galilee and not in Lebanon. Verse 13b, Why would you gaze on the Shulamite as the dance of the Mahanaim? In this last part of verse 13, Shulamite responds to the daughters of Jerusalem, "Why would you gaze on the Shulamite?" She's responded to that. Humble as she is, Shulamite still fails to fully comprehend her own beauty and the effect it has on others, especially on her husband. So to this, the daughters of Jerusalem reply in the 13c as the dance of the Mahanaim. Most likely, the dance of the Mahanaim refers to an exotic dance, for this is exactly what follows in the context. The daughters of Jerusalem want Shulamite to perform an exotic dance. It must be remembered that the chorus is imaginary in the lyric ideal, and they are not really actors in the play. The imaginary chorus is brought in to explain a situation, or to give a warning, or to allow for a dialogue to take place, or as is the case here, to set the stage for what follows. The request by the daughters of Jerusalem for an exotic dance by Shulamite is really Solomon's request, for as the following verses make clear, Shulamite is indeed dancing erotically. Look at verse 1 of chapter 7. How beautiful are your feet in sandals, O prince's daughter! The curves of your hips are like jewels, the work of the hands of an artist. As Shulamite dances before him, Solomon begins to detail the beauties of his wife. The Hebrew word translated feet signifies step and foot, and portraying her as dancing with her feet going back and forth. In describing the vibrations of her dancing thighs, Solomon points to the many twistings and windings of the upper part of her body by means of the thigh joints, for the Hebrew words signify movements of a circular kind. The Hebrew word translated curves refers to the thighs in motion and not the beauty curves of the thighs at rest. The entire Hebrew passage keeps pointing towards a dancing female. The thighs in motion are described as jewels. The Hebrew word signifies female ornaments consisting of gold, silver, and precious stones. This figure is used by Solomon because the bending of the thighs and loins, full of life and beauty, are like the free swinging of such ornaments when connected to a chain. Thus, the legs of Shulamite are very much in dancing motion. Let's read verses 2 through 5. Your navel is like a round goblet which never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is like a heap of wheat fenced about with lilies. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. Your neck is like a tower of ivory. Your eyes like the pools in Heshbon by the gate of Bath-rabbim. Your nose is like the tower of Lebanon, which faces toward Damascus. Your head crowns you like Carmel, and the flowing locks of your head are like purple threads. The king is captivated by your tresses. In verse 2, the navel is described as being in the shape of a half moon with the roundness of a basin or goblet, the kind of basin used for the mixing of fine wines. The belly or waist is described as a heap of wheat, which points to the color of her flesh, a mixture of wheat yellow along with some lily white. In verse 3, Solomon describes her two breasts in the same way as in chapter 4, verse 5. The bosom from which the breasts rise to a field where twin-paired young gazelles feed. The reference is both to the breasts and the nipples of the breasts. In verse 4, her neck is likened to a tower of ivory. Her eyes are like moist pools, and her nose is well defined. Verse 5 completes the description with Shulamite's head and hair in motion. Her head is majestic, and her hair appears red-purple. Solomon is totally captivated by her and sees himself as a prisoner in the tresses of her hair. Read verse 6 and 7. How beautiful and how delightful you are, my love, with all your charms. Your stature is like a palm tree, and your breasts are like its clusters. In verse 6, following the erotic dance of Shulamite before her husband as a new technique of sexual enjoyment, lovemaking begins. In verse 7, Shulamite is standing before Solomon, and he surveys her from head to foot, comparing her to a palm tree. The Hebrew word translated palm tree refers to the female flower out of which develops large clusters of juicy, sweet fruit. Shulamite's breasts are compared to such clusters. The Hebrew word translated clusters refers to the dark brown or yellow golden cluster which grows at the summit of the branches and beautifies the appearance of the palm tree. So as Shulamite stands tall and straight before Solomon after completing her erotic dance, Solomon compares her to a palm tree and notes that her body is further beautified by her breasts. Verse 8 and 9. I said, I will climb the palm tree. I will take hold of its fruit stalks. Oh, may your breasts be like clusters of the vine, and the fragrance of your breath like apples, and your mouth like the best wine. In verse 8, Solomon is viewed as climbing the palm tree as he and Shulamite unite in sexual enjoyment. The thought is that of securing possession of her and of the enjoyment the erotic dance had promised. The picture is that of fertilizing the palm tree, hence the making love to her. The words of Solomon close with a statement in 9a, which essentially says the same thing as the words of the famous song, "Kisses sweeter than wine." Verse 9b. It goes down smoothly for my beloved, flowing gently through the lips of those who fall asleep. I am my beloved, and his desire is for me. At this point, Shulamite interrupts Solomon's words with her own in 9b. Shulamite interrupts Solomon's statement about the wine to complete the figure begun by him. Bad tasting wines sticks to the palate. Good tasting wine goes down smoothly. The wine is a figure of sexual love, and like good wine that has been sipped in the course of an evening, the pleasing satisfaction still hovers long after they have gone to sleep. As this reflection comes to an end and the love-making completed, Shulamite declares herself to belong to Solomon alone, just as Solomon's desire is only for her, we see in verse 10.